People have been saying it for quite a while, and maybe it is true. Maybe the government really does have it out for Tesla. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So as far as I know, this was broken by Rob Maurer yesterday, although obviously this is public information, but I wanted to go through this in a little more detail. This is the IRS's official website, the government of the US. Manufacturers and models for new qualified clean vehicles purchased in 2023 or after. And I will of course post the link in the description so you can look at this yourself. Anyway, I wanted to look at this. There are a few requirements, but then the interesting part is down here when we look at the actual vehicles and what qualifies as counting for different categories and stuff. So anyway, the number one thing here is if we look, number one, this starts on January 1st, even though there is a March 1st-ish deadline for an updated indication of what qualifies as a clean energy vehicle, because there's a whole bunch of made in America versus made in Mexico versus made in Canada versus made in other countries, how much of different minerals and things like that have to be in the batteries, how the assembly has to be done, all of that kind of stuff is going to be updated. But as far as I understand it, on January 1st, which is just, what is this, the 30th right now? So, 2 days from now, basically, that this will take place, and this will be in the form of a tax rebate eventually. I don't believe you get the money up front. I think you have to wait until next year. So if you purchase the vehicle on January 2nd of this year, then you would have to wait until March or April of 2024 before you actually saw this money. So it's a long time that you'll have to wait because of the fact that it's a tax refund. So, if you really cared about the money, it would make a lot more sense to wait until October or November of 2023 to purchase the vehicle, because then there'd be a much shorter window before you could get your tax break. So starting up here at the top, if you bought and placed in service a new qualified plug-in electric vehicle, EV, or fuel cell vehicle, FCV, on January 1st, 2023 or later, and meet certain income limitations, which if I'm remembering correctly is, I think it's $150,000 for an individual, $300,000 for a couple filing together. And there's some head of household that's in between there, like 240 or 250, which I assume is you're single, but you have dependents that are under you. So anyway, there's the approximate, qualifications, eligibility limitations. And for people who are in a situation where they might exceed that, Tesla currently is offering $7,500 right now on most of their models, I believe, at least the Model 3 and Model Y. So it might be worth you're trying to get one, tomorrow and see if you can get it before that. For everybody else who makes less than that, then obviously this will be a big deal and will really help. One thing that's really annoying about this is that hybrid vehicles do count for the fully qualified tax rebate. I mean, even if they just given them a partial one, like maybe 40% or something like that, because they're hybrids as opposed to fully electric vehicles, it's very annoying that that's the case. But anyway, fuel cell vehicle is an interesting, addition to that, but there are so few fuel cell vehicles out there, and they have such a small market share, and they're so expensive that I don't even know if they would qualify, even if they are actually in service and you can purchase one. But anyway, assuming that all of these things are met, you can be eligible for a clean vehicle tax credit. Again, that's a tax credit, so you wouldn't see that until 2024 if you purchased a vehicle in 2023, up to $7,500 under the Internal Revenue Service Code Section 30D. Qualified manufacturers of the vehicles listed below have indicated that the vehicles are currently eligible for a credit provided other requirements are met. Check back for additions to this list. So this is what we have below. In just a second, we'll get there, starting with Audi and ending with Volvo. And then we have some more requirements. Vehicle make models that appear in the list below do not automatically qualify. They must also have undergone final assembly in North America. Again, remember that includes Mexico and Canada. Most importantly, Mexico for the, the Mex-E, the Ford Mex-E, the Mach-E that's made in Mexico. You know that Ford and GM lobbyists were working hard to make sure it wasn't final assembly in the United States. And as a sidebar, how that qualifies for a tax credit for Americans purchasing a car that was manufactured in another country Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know what you think about that, but anyway, that's the way it is. And then we get to the crux of what I want to talk about here. They are not to exceed a manufacturer's suggested retail price, MSRP, of $80,000 for vans, sport utility vehicles, or SUVs, and pickup trucks, or $55,000 for other vehicles. And then they have a website you can go to actually put in the VIN to find out how much your vehicle is worth and whether it qualifies, etc. And then, of course, if you click the plus buttons, you can see what individual manufacturers have and what the applicable MSRP limit is for them. So if you look down here, what immediately caught my eye was that the Ford Escape plug-in hybrid gets an $80,000 credit. It's ridiculous that a hybrid with a freaking gas engine gets an $80,000 MSRP limit and a full $7,500 credit. That's just ridiculous. Anyway, you can tell that I'm not particularly thrilled about the idea that hybrids get this credit. At the very least, they should maybe get $1,000 or something like that. They should get a much, much smaller credit than a fully EV vehicle because they're still gas-powered cars. But of course, you can also see that the Ford F-150 Lightning gets $80,000. Interestingly enough, the Ford Mustang Mach-E only gets $55,000, even though I would put it into quasi-SUV category. It is substantially smaller than the Tesla Model Y, but it is interesting that that's also in the $55,000 bucket. And then several of the manufacturers, most notably General Motors here, they have entered into a written agreement with us to become a qualified manufacturer, but hasn't yet submitted a list of specific makes and models that are eligible. Please check back here for updated information. So a number of vehicle manufacturers are in this camp. You would imagine that like Kia and Mazda and other companies might be in that situation because they don't finally put together the vehicle in the United States or in Mexico, etc. But anyways, really interesting that GM is also in this camp, which means that they are not immediately eligible for any $7,500 or whatever tax credits. So this is something to keep an eye on this space, and obviously you want to check back here from time to time. And then, of course, we get to Rivian, which, interestingly enough, both their R1S and R1T count for the $80,000 cap, but I don't think that's going to help either of them because I believe that the MSRP of both of those is over $80,000, although I have not checked recently. And then we start getting into bizarro land. I'm going to start with Volkswagen. They actually have the largest selection aside from Tesla, but you can see that their ID4, ID4 Pro, Pro S, and ID4S all are only qualified for $55,000, but the all-wheel drive Pro and all-wheel drive Pro S are $80,000. So it's the same size car. It's just the amount of wheels that are being driven by a motor. As opposed to two, it's four wheels that are being driven by a motor, and suddenly it's worth $80,000 cap as opposed to $55,000 cap. And then, of course, the pièce de résistance. So you've got the 2023 Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive, which counts for $55,000, and the Model 3 long range, which is also $55,000. And that makes sense. Those are sedan vehicles. But then look what you get here. You have the Model Y all-wheel drive 7-seat variant with 3 rows, has a cap of $80,000, and then the long range and the performance. So all of the ones that have that extra little jump seat in the back qualify for $80,000, but the exact same vehicles, right? The all-wheel drive, the long range, and the performance, the exact same vehicles without the little jump seats in the back, for some reason don't count as SUVs and count in the other category and only get $55,000. So let's jump on here and see how much a Model Y actually costs, and I have already looked and it's more than $55,000. Note, if you get the vehicle before the 31st, which means if you order it tomorrow and somehow manage to take delivery, you would still be eligible for a $7,500 credit right away from Tesla. So you don't even have to deal with all this stuff. You just get a reduced cost. So let's just take a look at the purchase price here, and let's go with the all-wheel drive. Yep. You can see long range and performance. Both of those are 10-ish and $14,000 more than what the cap is for the vehicle. So unless you go ahead and get the 7-seat option, these vehicles will not qualify on January 1st for this credit, which of course seems patently ridiculous. And so if you really do want to qualify for the credit, number one, you have to order the 7-seat version, which is $3,000 more, and also reduces the amount of cargo space and stuff you have. I'd much rather have the cargo space than the extra 2 seats, which means that if you purchase that vehicle, effectively you're only getting $4,500. In other words, if you didn't need the 7-seater originally, you're paying $3,000 to get $7,500 back, so you're only netting $4,500 in gain, which again seems a little ridiculous. The size of the vehicle is the same, but the number of passengers passengers is different and therefore it counts as an SUV. This whole thing is very, very odd because the Ford Escape is only a 5-seater vehicle unless they've got some secret back seat that I know about. So you've got a plug-in hybrid that has 5 seats, which is the same as what the Model Y has, and quite frankly, the ID4 as well. So you're looking at Volkswagen and Tesla are both being screwed by this situation. Anyway, it's the same size vehicle. It's got the same number of seats, and yet it qualifies as an SUV, whereas the Model Y, which clearly is an SUV, and also the ID4 is also clearly an SUV. Both of those vehicles don't count for this, and yet somehow the Volkswagen version, if you get the all-wheel drive version, does count as an SUV, but for Tesla, that doesn't count. You have to get the all-wheel drive version, which is their base model, and you have to get the extra seats. So there's something absolutely ridiculous and inconsistent going on. And, you know, there are conspiracy theorists out there who say the government is not satisfied or very pleased with Elon Musk and therefore Tesla. And so what they're doing is they're attempting to screw Tesla. But at the same time, you can also see that there's shenanigans with Volkswagen and giving Ford the credit for the Escape, but not for the Mach-E. It just all smacks of an incredible amount of inconsistency in what they're doing. So I'm not going to subscribe to the conspiracy theory thing. I'm more going to subscribe to the idiotic thing, right? There seems to be something about bureaucracy. When you get large bureaucracy, it just ends up creating ridiculous situations like this. There's no logic to what they're doing here. You can sort of see a pattern, but the pattern doesn't really make any sense. If you're not changing the size of the vehicle, how something with all-wheel drive counts as an SUV, but something without all-wheel drive doesn't count, or the same size vehicle with an extra little tiny rear jump seat in it counts as an SUV, whereas the other one doesn't, I just don't know. I think what Tesla should do is they should have a third option. They should have a 7-seat removable option, right? They'll just charge you $1,000 for a couple of little camp chairs that you put in the back, and then the car would count and come under the $80,000 cap. And so you would then be able to net yourself, you know, $6,500 as opposed to only $4,500 by purchasing a couple of dumb camp chairs that are like themed for Tesla or something. I don't know. It just seems like they're going to have to do something. One would hope that as this gets reevaluated, certainly by March or something, that these other vehicles would count. I don't really see Tesla able to lower the price of the Model Y anytime soon to $55,000 to qualify. So I think that's a big stretch. You know, if it had been $60,000 or $63,000 or something, I could definitely have seen Tesla cutting at least the long range model so that it would make sure that it fit. But currently the performance Model 3 doesn't count, and that makes some sense, right? The performance models, it's like, okay, you're getting a performance model. I don't know that you necessarily need the credit, but at least the base model of every one of these vehicles should count. And the fact that it doesn't seems a little bit ridiculous. And so you can see that only really the base model, Model 3, and none of the Model Ys, unless you get the 7-seat version, count for the tax credit. So all of this seems patently ridiculous. All right, so that's my little rant. What do you have to say about that? I would be very interested to know. Definitely let me know in the comments. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed the video, please do like it so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. I'm going to be meeting a couple of them at CES this year. And if you happen to be there, definitely let me know. And of course, if you want to join the team, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, success is a possible outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on. So check it out. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Thank you. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.